الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. May Allah's continuous blessings be bestowed upon all of us attending today's Quranic session. Today's presenter is Irshad Hussain from Ottawa, Canada. He is technical writer with an inborn passion for reading books. Thus, his presentation today is the essence drawn from a number of books by prominent ulama. He will be presenting the tafsir of verses 107 and 108 of Surah Baqarah. Thereafter will be question answers time, and the findings of participants followed with the presentation by Dr. Syed Ali Musawi, and finally will be the sum up by Alim Syed Hadi Abedi. I will now request Muhammad Hussain Razvi to please present the graphic of the verses in Arabic with Khirat from online. And thereafter, I'll request Irshad Hussain to proceed.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ألم تعلم أن الله له ملك السماوات والأرض وما لكم من دون الله من ولي ولا نصير أم تريدون أن تسألوا رسولكم كما سئل موسى من قبل ومن يتبدل الكفر بالإيمان فقد ضل سواء السبيل.
Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim. I'll pass it off to Uncle Irshad now to begin the tafsir.
Now I request Irshad Hussain, please proceed with the tafsir.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So you can look at Safa. Will be having a few slides up just so we can keep track of what I'm covering in the verses. So you can look at that to follow along. And I'm going to try and keep my presentation down to maybe about 25 minutes or less today. So if it's getting longer than that, please let me know, and I will wrap it up. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we're going to look at Surah 2, 107 and 108. And Surah 107 says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, know you not, talam is the Arabic use, know you not that to Allah belongs the kingdom, the mulk of the heavens and the earth, and there is not for you, wa ma lakum is the phrase used, other than Allah, any wali, any patron, friend, or helper, nasir. And that's 107. So I just want to also just take a look at the last part of verse 106 from the previous session and the first part of 107, which we're looking at today, because they use similar phrasing. They both say, alam talam, don't you know, or know you not. So they're asking a question, but it's a rhetorical question. So the last few words of verse 106 are saying, know you not that Allah has power over all things. And then verse 107 is echoing the phraseology. Know you not that to Allah belongs the kingdom, the mulk of the heavens and the earth. And this is sort of augmenting, clarifying, developing, and intensifying the implications of verse 106. Because verse 106 is saying all of the power is in Allah's hands, and saying how is that happen? Well, this is clarifying. So 106 says God has power over everything. 107 specifies that that power is like a king, but an absolute king, an absolute owner over his kingdom. So a kingdom that excludes nothing and contains everything. There's nothing outside of this kingdom because the seven heavens and the earth, the entire system of existence is God's. What else is there but his kingdom? Can anyone point to something that is not within his domain? It's not possible. And the very notion of Tawheed denies that possibility. Interestingly, the phrase ta'lam is used is usually singular. So the first part of this address is not explicitly to a whole group, but is seemingly to one person, that person being by implications the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to the tafsirs, almost all the tafsirs. So the verse would then read, O Prophet, know you not. So if the last part of 106 and the first part of 107 are singular and addressing the Prophet, as the phrasings and the tafsirs indicate, why is God questioning the Prophet about knowledge that the Prophet already knows? Doesn't the Prophet already know that God has power over all things and that the kingdom is his? So there are a couple of possibilities here, and they can be simultaneously true. They don't have to exclude each other. So one possibility is it is a teaching tool. It is a way of educating the people around the Prophet, the believers and the non-believers, without addressing them directly. If they are non-believers, then they don't, at that moment anyway, accept that God has power and kingship. This is like an oblique, indirect technique for conveying a truth to them. For example, if there's suppose you're teaching some children, if there's a child that needs correcting or who needs to be taught some fact for their own benefit, say something like 2 times 5 is 10, but the child is resistant to being taught their times table, you can address another child who already knows their times table and ask them, you know that 2 times 5 is 10, don't you? So it's a statement phrased as a question to someone who already has the knowledge in order to convey in a nice way and teach the answer in a nicer way to someone else who's present, who doesn't know the answer. So in a similar way, the Prophet is addressed about something he already knows, but all those around him, including us today, are the real beneficiaries of this reminder. So that's one possibility, the basic, simple possibility. Another possibility, this is actually for the Prophet. We read it as words, but this is revelation. And we know the power and force with which the revelation descended on the Prophet and entered his heart, and the power and force with which it emerged from his heart into speech for the Muslims. When we read about how he was overpowered or physically shaken by the descending verses, we shouldn't shrug this off as a historical tidbit, but this was the power of what was being sent down or what was being formed in his heart. So when the Quran says, "O Prophet, don't you know?" then that knowing is like an earthquake within the Prophet's being. It is God casting the reality behind the words, the reality underlying the words, the immense actuality of that knowledge into the Prophet. When it's sent down to him, it connects him with the reality of that. Remember, for the Prophet, this is revelation that shakes him when it comes. We hear it, and it's just words and phrases to us, or we read it in the Quran. Well, okay, this is word and phrase, we'll read this elsewhere in the Quran, we'll just move on. But for the Prophet, each word and phrase is a signifier pointing to and unveiling the tremendous reality behind the words. So each time God says no, God is deepening the Prophet's knowledge, waking his being to the reminder of the vast and powerful truth that is veiled by the words. Because the words are very much veiled for us, because it doesn't have that effect on us. Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam used to say that he would repeat a verse or phrase of the Quran within his heart until it was as if that verse was being spoken to him, revealed to him, and the reality of the verse would then overwhelm him and open up knowledge for him. So we can only imagine what it was like for the Prophet himself, who received it directly. So the verses that are phrasing "know you not" in a singular form, apparently addressed to the Prophet, is both a powerful growth in the Prophet's knowledge and a way of teaching all those around him. So the verse continues, "Know you not that to Allah belongs the kingdom, the mulk of the heavens and the earth." So the kingdom, all of it, belongs to God. All the levels of reality, all the levels of heaven, all of this cosmos that we dwell in, and this cosmos we dwell in, which we see around us, to the furthest star, galaxies, everything is the lowest heaven. We are also part of the kingdom referred to here. We made a covenant acknowledging this in pre-existence when God asked all the souls that will ever be born, am I not your Lord? That's Quran 7:172. And we all acknowledged it. And when we circumambulate, we do our tawafs around the Kaaba. And then as we're doing our tawafs, we raise our hand as we pass the corner of the Kaaba with the black stone. This is like an acknowledgement of that pre-eternal covenant, where we all acknowledge that God is our Lord in front of him. So to God belongs all kingship, and we belong to him, to this all-encompassing divine kingdom. In other words, we are in the care of his kingdom. No one is the King of Kings but he. But he is not exalted through drums or banners, servitors, and retinue. The presidents and prime ministers, the dictators and kings, the leaders of this world, they display their armies, they show their weapons, they send out their spokespersons, they mount up their retinue of technological prowess, they show their power through destruction and domination. Then they lift up their heads and they boast of authority and influence, riches of their realm, military forces, and their control over other nations. Who they can influence in all kinds of ways. They strut for a time upon the stage of the world, but in the end, all their posturing.
Siraj Mamu, can you please mute it? Thank you.
Please mute everybody. Please mute. Irshad, proceed. Proceed, Irshad.
Bhai, we can't hear Brother Irshad's.
Okay.
No sound, please.
Yes.
No
Salam,
sound
can you hear
available.
Me?
Yeah, now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. Jazakallah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how I got muted. Okay, I'll just go back a bit in case anything was missed. So the leaders of this world, the presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, they display their armies, show their weapons, send out their spokespersons. They use their technological prowess, for destruction and domination. Then they boast of their authority and influence. They boast of the riches of their realm, which is stolen from others, military forces, their control over other nations. So they're strutting upon the stage of the world. But all their posturing, their boasting and killing, it really doesn't signify anything more than that they are empty souls caught up in their own egotism, and their kingdom is the kingdom of their own vanity. The true king is he whose kingship has no removal, whose exaltation has no abasement, whose decree has no rejection, who himself has no peer, and who is the owner of all realms. So God is the one who will call before him every individual, every action, every word, and say, now, account for all of it. There was only one kingdom and one king. How did you delude yourself to believe otherwise? And Quran 39:67 says, on the day of judgment, God will grasp the earth and fold up the entire universe with his right hand and proclaim the mulk, the kingdom was only his. He will say, I am the Malik. Where now are those kings who strutted boastfully, trampling over the earth? Where are those who behaved like destructive tyrants? So the Quran forcefully conveys the reality of kingship, of the mulk, and it wants us to understand this, to see things as they truly are. So then it goes on to inform us what this implies for you and me and for all the believers. So in the second part of the verse, lakum, which is in second person plural, is used. So the address, which was initially singular, now expands to include the people as a whole. So at first obliquely addressed the people through the prophet. Now it directly addresses the people. And there's no patron, wali, or helper, nasir, for you other than Allah. So it's just clarifying the nature of the kingship for us. There is only one king. There's only one kingdom. Everything is subject to that kingdom and is bound by its principles and ethics. It is only the king who is the source of walaya, the source of help, of nasr. So without taking him as wali and as a helper in that walayat, we are lost. Wilaya refers to a type of bond of extreme nearness that encompasses an attachment indicated by love and mystical friendship, as well as by the willing recognition of divine authority and influence between those who are bound by this wilaya. Our lives, our dwelling upon the earth, our nafs are all subject to God's dominion. We are in the ambit, the system of creation that he shapes and sustains. The guide to his system is a walaya to him, because there are other walayas. You can be a walaya, to shaitan, but it's the walaya to Allah. That is the one, the true guide to his system. And when you're bound to him through that, you will be outside the influence of the other kings of this world, those who pretend to be kings of the world. And the walaya of his vicegerents to him and our attachment to them, so in other words, his true representatives here, who are bound in close walaya to him, and our attachment to them and to him, and to what they brought in the way of help and assistance through him. He has provided help, and he has shown the path of friendship and nearness and divine authority. His help is always there. The walaya and the nas are always present for those willing to reach for it. We generally just don't recognize it in a powerful enough way to live according to that reality. But when the sincere, utterly loyal person of faith comes to know that is to actualize within themselves that the king, owner, and possessor, the source of walaya, is in reality God, that everything is his kingdom and no one else's, they begin to empty their heads of egoism's delusions. They are not deceived by the baubles of this world, nor by the political games, nor false kings or boastful leaders. They surrender just to the absolute owner. They begin to consider God's desire, principles, and ethics prior to their own desire, and grasp that in reality, this king does not need to hold his kingdom with any army, and he gives portions of his kingdom to whom he will. To his vicegerents, to his representatives. As Yusuf says in Surah Yusuf, my Lord, you have given me some of the kingdom, right? So he's given some aspect of the kingdoms. God gives to whom he wills, but only to those who have walaya with him, who are his true representatives. So this refers to those who act as God's vicegerents. It refers to those who fulfill trust, who uphold truth, who are walis of God. So for us, we have to decide where we are in this hierarchy. Ali alayhi salam was one who had no delusion about God's absolute kingship. And when he was with companions like Kumail, he would voice his disappointment that so few recognized reality as he did. So the heartbreak of this situation rises again and again as you read through the Nahj al-Balagha. As he asks in an oration to Kumail, he says, where are the truly faithful to God and what he has sent? Where are those who, when they array themselves in ranks, are an unshakable wall reinforced by angels, as on the day of Badr? Where are the ones who are truly attached to the city of knowledge, to the Prophet's heart? Where are the ones whose bodies keep company with this world while their spirits are connected to the loftiest station? Where are the ones who are God's stewards, calling the people with honor and truth to his way? And then he ends by saying, oh, how I long to see ones such as these. There's a beautiful oration from the Nahj al-Balagha. That longing and call of his is across the ages to any who strive to understand and implement the reality of what is conveyed so powerfully in so many places in the Quran, and through the actions of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. So that was verse 107, and I'm going to move on now to 108. 108 says, would you question your messenger as Moses was questioned of old? But whoever changes from faith to unbelief, to kufr, to covering and concealing truth, has strayed without doubt from the even way. So we think our age is an age of cynicism, of doubt and questioning. But the mockery and questioning that the messengers went through shows that it is a trait that surfaces repeatedly when the status quo of a given time is disturbed or threatened. So the verse is saying, be careful that you don't fall prey to the same errors and mistakes of past people. So look at the insolent, presumptuous questions put to Moses in the Quran. They're not posed from a desire for knowledge, but a desire to challenge. Not much different from Pharaoh's questions and demands. Questioning is in itself a necessary and a good thing. But there are some who question because they burn with a genuine desire to know, to comprehend, to understand. There are others who question to create difficulties, to throw up obstacles, to obscure, to sow confusion, doubt, to dissension, or to just delay, circumvent, or even prevent an answer. So here the verse is pointing out that the Jews, more often than not, applied the second insincere type of questioning to the prophet who was sent to rescue them from the hardship and servitude they were suffering under the Pharaoh. Were they not aware of the tremendously difficult journey of Moses, who survived the terrible slaughter of children, grew under Asia's eyes, and then stood up against the most powerful ruler of the most powerful empire, committing the most brutal oppression and slaughter in that time, with only a staff in his hand, and God, recognizing God's kingdom is behind him. Every step of the way, the Jews were uncooperative, demanding. They were bold in opposing and questioning each action of Moses. Every small task given them resulted in a litany of insincere questions in order to shun or delay the task or to show disdain for what they were requested to do. So here was someone sent to lift oppression from them, but they repay him with repeated rebellion and churlishness. So the questioning of Moses is also mentioned in Quran 4:153, where, they're asking for a book to descend from heaven. They want to see God with their own eyes, because, only then they'll believe. And then the moment Moses is absent, they question everything he brought them and turn to worship of the golden calf. Well, the Quraysh and, the idol worshippers was similarly challenged the prophet. But this questioning aims to stir up doubt, to sabotage, to undo the good that has been done, to generate ingratitude. This is so different from sincere questioners who thirst for true understanding and who gather around the people of wisdom, eager to grow their knowledge and purify their hearts. Like Ali alayhi salam, who never left the prophet's side and who asked with a sincere heart and who was fed knowledge from the prophet the way a mother bird feeds her young. So this verse is recognizing the doubt and insincerity in so many of the prophet's followers and warns that this is a path that leads to casting a covering, a kufr of darkness over their own nature, and one that will lead them away from truth and a balanced outlook. It's warning them by reminding them of how callously and in what an ugly, disingenuous manner Moses, such a great prophet as Moses, was questioned. The rescuer of the Jews, treated mockingly quite frequently by the ones he saved, and then asked simply, will you behave towards one sent for your benefit like they behaved towards Moses? And implied in that is the message of the previous verse, that there's only one true kingdom, one king, and the only path is that of Walaya. And that path is not one of recalcitrance, obstinacy, or perverse questioning, for that leads to kufr, and to falling away from what the verse refers to as sawa al-sabil, the balanced or even level path. Here in this verse, it is telling the Quraysh and all who follow in later times the purpose of the Quran. The purpose is not to satisfy foolish desires and not to ramble about stories and not to endlessly answer insincere questions. It is to focus on salient truths and the principles that underlie them. If we had one or two takeaways from these particular verses, I guess I would say, it's very hard to talk about takeaways from verses of the Quran. It's always nice to have something that we can say that, okay, well, this is what I got from it or something. But honestly, the Quran is such an integrated, cohesive book that the takeaway is to work at realizing that integratedness and that cohesiveness, that connectedness, and imbibing its principles and ethics into our hearts and its approach to our approach, our own approach to life. That's the one takeaway you should always have from the Quran. But if we had to, sort of focus on something from these verses, there's only one overarching king. We should realize this with utmost seriousness and begin to live with that truth, growing increasingly in whatever way we're able to, and strengthen that within our lives. And that Allah is the wali, the wilayat is with him, the help is through him, but he has walis who act for our benefit within his kingdom. Like Yusuf, they are given portions of the kingdom. And they, the imams, the awliya, are the signposts of the religion, and they are the pegs of the earth. They are the lamps of the world and the keys to the gardens of paradise. They lay down the foundations of walaya, and they raise up the pillars of truthfulness and nobility. God's gentleness towards the creatures comes through them. And the goal in the creation of the realm of being is they. In name and mark, they are the poor. And in reality, they are the true representatives of the only king of the heavens and the earth.
Thank you, Irshad. Thank you very much. Of 30 minutes, you have done 25 minutes. You still have 5 minutes left. If you would like to add something more, you are welcome. Otherwise, now we go to the question on. Yes, Irshad, do you have anything more to say?
Well, I don't know if I should do this, but so, about this verse about the kingdom, there are those who, in history, Islamic history, as well as, history of others as well, who've sort of said that, why do you oppose the leaders? Why do you oppose the government? Why do you oppose their authority? Because, the Quran says, do you not know that God gives rule authority to whomever he wishes? But the question involves, in a way, a clear denial of the Quran, because in a certain sense, you can say that in a certain sense, God gave kingship to the Pharaoh, but didn't Moses oppose him? Right? Nimrod's kingship was a divine gift in the sense that everything is from God, but didn't Abraham move against him and oppose him? Muawiyah represented the holders of authority. So why did the Imam, Ali, and then later Imam Hassan, and then Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, peace be upon them all, gather up, Imam Hussein gathered up his family and 50 or 60 followers and rose up in revolt against this holder of authority, Yazid, another holder of authority, Yazid. Why did he do that? So some people, they take these verses from the Quran, you take it out of context, and then they use it as a way to uphold their illegitimate authority, believing they can do whatever they want. So these holders of authority, they're mentioned right after God and the messenger in the other Quranic verse where it says, obey God and obey the messenger and the holders of authority from among you. And between that and the kingship verses, they take it like, well, God gives kingship to whoever he wishes. But the thing is, those who have that authority, they have to be close to God and the messenger in their practice and in their lives. They have to be like a shadow of God and the messenger. So, what is meant by shadow is something that's not acting according to its own ideas and opinions and its desire to have authority and move in its own direction for its own benefit. But the shadow doesn't move by itself. It only moves when the person moves. So if a person is a shadow of God, they abandon their individual volition, in the sense that they act only in accordance with the principles of Islam. And it's very much like, what Imam Ali in his letter to Malik al-Ashtar is saying to him is that this is how you have to be, because it's not that you have authority of the people, it's that you are acting for the benefit of the people. Just want to sort of point out that, in the time of Yazid, the judges of Yazid, they declared a verdict saying that Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, God forbid, was deserving of death. So these are all people who don't read the Quran in its full roundedness and its full context. So when we read these verses and we recognize that, historically, these will be, verses like this and the verses about obey God and obey those in authority have been read in a way that takes it out of context, doesn't look at it in the context of the rest of the Quran, and then winds up with these illegitimate ways for people to justify their own what they want to do and the oppression that they cause.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You have taken correct 30 minutes. And now I am sure, as I know Irshad, even if he's given 2 hours, that's less for him. But today, alhamdulillah.
Well, I apologize.
Irshad, you have done absolutely up to 30 minutes and wonderful. So now it's time for a question. If there is somebody who has a question, please raise your hand.
Yeah, just Assalamu alaikum, Irshad bhai. Jazakallah, wish we could just have sessions only with you, inshallah.
No, this is my last session. I'm taking a long break after this.
No. I'm saying in the future. I was just reminded of, the statement that Yazid made in Darbar-e-Sham, where he actually tried to taunt the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam about this, that look, God has given me the mulk, and and then so he was trying to, in some sense, link the Quranic verse, and then Bibi Zainab actually then reminded him that, well, you have not you have not read the other verses. And so I was thinking that what you just mentioned has got that historical link.
Yes.
Yes. So Alhamdulillah.
No, that's a very beautiful point, because that the power of Zainab's speech, right, is so amazing. The way she articulates it and sort of shreds these arguments to pieces of Yazid. Just showing that these are people who don't understand the Quran. They use the Quran. There's a verse in the Quran which says that it warns that don't take a piece of the Quran and put it against another piece of the Quran. In other words, don't let the Quran be something that is used to knock down another verse of the Quran. And this is exactly what those people were doing. They take it out of context. They take it, verse by itself, and they're taking the Quran into pieces. And that's not what the Quran is meant to be. It's a very, very comprehensive, very connected book, and it's important to put in that effort to realize that and understand that. So yeah, that's a very beautiful comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a very quick question, and perhaps you may be able to answer, or Hadi Bhai and Professor Muswi can, that why were the Bani Israel given so many chances, and despite the fact that they kept on, questioning and denying what Musa was trying to convey. So is there a philosophical reason as to why God gave the Bani Israel a long rope, whereas we see that in other cases Allah's wrath came sooner than it did for Bani Israel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess one thing we should realize, that it's not all the Bani Israel who were like this, right? So the Quran is pointing out those who were creating, it was sort of like a leadership that was carrying over from the time that they were, subjugated to the Pharaoh. But there were people also who maybe had influence in the Pharaoh's court, and now they're sort of going into this new situation where they're still trying to sort of maintain some authority of theirs. So you see, the one who casts, he follows in the footsteps of Moses, and realizes that there's traces of Moses's spiritual power in the footsteps, and he picks up the dust from the footsteps and casts it into the golden calf, and giving it a semblance of kind of spiritual power into the calf itself. And by this he tricks and fools the people. There's a beautiful section of the Quran that talks about all of this. So there's somebody who has some knowledge. He recognizes the authority of Moses. He sees that Moses, even just the traces of dust in Moses' footsteps, carry that, some trace of Moses' spiritual power that's given to him by God. And he uses that for a deception, to deceive the people. So there's a whole kind of leadership that engages in this deception to fool the people at large. And this is something that happens in our time. It's happened throughout Islamic history as well. Look at the Umayyads and, other successive governments where the imams, the people who have the true spiritual authority, are imprisoned. They go through so many difficulties. They've been through all of this. But again, there's a leadership that recognizes the truth, but they conceal parts of it, they cover it over, and they use it for their own purposes because they're more concerned with that worldly authority and not letting that go. So I think, it's the same thing in the time of the Jews. They were given a lot of rope because maybe the majority of them the bulk of them were still invested in Moses, but they were being deceived constantly by these other leaders who are.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Irshad, a very excellent presentation, and I'm really impressed with your breadth of knowledge and making very complicated, deep things very simple. I just had a question about in verse 107 when Allah talks about that you have neither guardian nor helper, and this to me kind of defines the relationship that Allah has with us. It's a very kind of nuanced distinction between the guardian and the helper. And I was just wondering if you could give some more commentary about this distinction, the difference between the guardian, the role of the guardian, and the role of the helper, in that it really does define our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, because there is that distinction that's made where the two of them are there, and the two of them, the Nasir is mentioned after the walayat, the wali. So, you can take it that the one emerges from the other. So in other words, when you take Allah as your wali, putting aside, all of these worldly authorities that want your walayat, then that is when the Nasir also comes into play. So you could look at it different ways. You can say that, oh, these are independent. There's the walayat, and there's the Nasir, and they're separate. But there does seem to be, the indication that there's first the walayat, and then the Nasir. So the one is emerging from the other. So once you accept that walayat, that help is going to come to you. And the walis who God has authorized, the Prophet, the Imams, and others, when you go to them, that's when the benefit comes to you. That help will come to you. But if you're off in another road, accepting somebody else's wali or walayat, you may imagine that this is benefiting you in some way, but in the long run, that's not going to be the case, because he says, other than Allah, there isn't. He is the wali, and there's no helper either. So unless you take that walayat, and then the help will come through that walayat, you can imagine that you're benefiting from all kinds of going other ways in the world, but in the long run, that's not necessarily going to benefit you. And he's the authority, and you'll find out people will find out when we go before him, and he brings everything out into the open. So there's other verses that you have to take. There's a number of other verses that go with this, but I'd say that's the basic thing I would say, and inshallah the Maulana in his time can elaborate on that or clarify on that. But that was my reading.
Yeah, so can we determine that or establish that guardianship comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the help comes through other people?
Yeah, I mean, Allah is the wali, but as in the case of Yusuf, where he's gifted control over a portion of the kingdom, it's the same with those who are like the Prophet and the Imams who are walis. They're walis for us, and their walayat is directly with Allah, and our walayat is also directly with Allah, but it's the guidance that they provide is part of us having that, enabling that connection of ours through them, through their walayat to the walayat of Allah. And of course, yes, they would be our helpers, and any who the help can come in many ways, but it's predicated. I mean, this is a pretty strong verse, right? Because it's saying, other than Allah, there isn't any. And there's a whole thing that I went into on the walayat and the nature of walayat, and it would take me another 40 minutes to talk about that. But if you go to the other verses in the Quran and connect all of the ones that are talking about walayat, they're pretty strong. They're really it's hammering that point home over and over again in very, very strong ways and elaborating on it. So, it's not like it's leaving a whole lot of doubt open for that, but it's something that's very hard for us to, because we're so immersed in the world, and, we're always, we're talking, we want leadership of different kinds over here, and but you have to sort of, which is fine, that's all fine, but it all has to be parsed through this other wilayat. I mean, the examples of the wilayat, you want to see what an example of wilayat in action is? You go look at the Prophet, you look at Imam Ali, you look at all the other Imams, you look at, the whole sequence of them. And so then, there's your example in the world. And do we imbibe the ethics that they provide? Do we imbibe their, the way that they look at things, the way they're completely, realize that there is this only one king and one kingdom? Do we recognize that? And, when we're acting, you still have to act in the world. You have to act at work. You have to act in all kinds of places, but it all should be tempered and predicated through, those principles and those ethics. And, I mean, and so that's important for us to kind of imbibe. And the more you immerse yourself in the Quran, the more you immerse yourself in what the Imams provided, the more you'll get closer to that. So, sorry, I don't want to go on too long. I'll let the Molana deal with with these in more detail or something. He's
Thank you, Irshad. Now we will go to findings. Among the participants, there must be somebody who will be able to add something other than what Irshad has presented. Please raise your hand if there is someone who would like to add the findings. Akbar, please proceed.
Thank you. I just one to add just a little. I found in this one commentary that we understand from verse 108 around the questioning of the prophet, that during his life there were, and I think you pointed out, Ishad, around these futile questions that were asked, and I assume that probably through his whole mission he had a lot of futile questions. In this commentary they talk about, as an example, once Wahab ibn Zayd and Rafi ibn Harmala came to the Holy Prophet and asked him to bring a letter from Allah for them to read,
Yes.
and they might believe. Right? Or it happened that he was asked to make some streams appear and flow for them so they might follow him. So this kind of continuous questioning, and it just made me think about this idea of futile questions, questions that are asked as a kind of technique to obfuscate or, to conceal the truth. So an example would be, with this whole thing that happened in, Palestine and Hamas. The questions people ask are, do you support Hamas? Do you support what happened on October 7th? These kinds of questions that really are futile questions, because they're really just trying to conceal, take people away from understanding, the truth behind the matter.
Absolutely.
It's a very common technique. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind of alerting us to, these kind of techniques that could, kind of obfuscate the truth.
No, absolutely. It goes on. You want a beautiful example of that? I don't say beautiful. A terrible example of that is exactly what's happening in in Palestine, and the obfuscation throughout the media, and the hasbara propaganda from Israel. It's just insane. It's a perfect example of what happened with Moses and what happened with the prophets. With the prophet, even in the Quran, there's the whole section where they're saying that, well, if he's been sent by God, why doesn't God just send an angel to us? Why is he sending, why is he sending a person from among us? What is this? Like, why doesn't he just send a magical book down from heaven? And let us see this. We want to see the book descending. But the thing is that they wouldn't believe even then. There's always, it's not in their hearts to believe. That's not their aim. The aim of their question is exactly what you said, to obfuscate and to delay and to, put aside all of this. So.
Yeah, and also reminds me of a verse that I'm trying to think it, where basically Allah is asking us to feed people, and then the people question and say, "Oh, sorry." The prophet asks the people, right, and then they respond by saying, "Do you want us to feed people that Allah could feed Himself?"
Yes. Well, there you go. There's
Yeah.
that fits in with your question and what the Mulana was saying about the walayat is the authority, and then there's the help, and the help has to come through people, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
They're the hands of God on this earth. So.
Okay, one thing I learned today, that there are certain verses wherein Allah speaks to the Prophet. It looks that it is something Prophet knew it, but it's still, in spite of Prophet knowing it, Allah repeats it. So it's very nice. Irshad has explained that repeating is to deepen the knowledge, to further more power to the knowledge. A repetition has been very necessary. So we should try to adapt among our lifestyle to repeat certain things, maybe to the children, to anybody, to make it more effective. So that's something that I was able to learn today. Any more questions, please? Now we'll go to the finding.
Assalamu alaikum, Baba.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to share a little something about verse 107, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do you not know that to Allah belongs the kingdom of the heavens and earth, and there is not for you besides Allah any guardian or helper? So just a little different twist to this. I'm focusing on the part where this ayah is saying, questioning us. Actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually questioning us. This is a very unique way the Quran, Allah brings something very important to our attention, is by questioning it, meaning to say that I'm putting this question to you, think about it. So what stands out for me here is, do you not know to Allah belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth? This really got me thinking about several verses in the Quran, where the Quran repeatedly talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's kingdom and his creation, and how these are signs for the people to reflect and think and ponder upon it. Because the Quran over and over again encourages us to think upon the creation of the heavens and earth. And it says, do they not ponder upon the creation of the heavens and earth? So one verse that I had come across some time back when I was doing some research on this is the two verses of Al Imran. And the importance of this verse was that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that it was the result of these two ayahs that his life changed. Like, his life changed after these verses were revealed. Therefore, he used to recite these two ayahs every time he did wudu, as a preparation that he's going to now stand in front of the king of the heavens. And so I just wanted to read this verse, Al Imran verses 190 and 191. Behold, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alteration of night and day, there are indeed signs for people of understanding, who remember Allah standing and sitting and laying on their sides, and ponder upon the wonders of creation of the heavens and earth, and say, our Lord, you have not created all of this in vain. We proclaim your purity, so save us from the punishment of the fire. So when I think of this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I didn't create this thing. That means he didn't create this purposelessly. Therefore, reflecting on this ayah and all the ayahs where Allah is reminding us over and over that the kingdom of the heavens and the earth belongs to him. When I think about that, I think of the earth and the entire universe as a trust and the gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us and made us the representative of this trust. And how are we treating this trust? What are we doing to this trust? Are we destroying it with our overconsumption? Are we destroying it by our wastefulness? Are we destroying it by polluting it? How are we going to answer the King of the heavens and earth when we stand in front of him? This is just a takeaway I want to give to everybody to take with you as we are entering, inshallah, very soon the month of Ramadan. And all of you here are from different masajids, and the amount of waste and destruction we cause during the blessed holy month of Ramadan is very heartbreaking. Please think of this verse whenever you're thinking of using and causing wastefulness and pollution in this earth. Think, behold, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alteration of night and day, there are signs for people of understanding. Inshallah, I will leave you with this. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Very,
Jazakallah khair.
very beautifully said.
Very nice.
And
Now
also
we-
Surah Rahman, right? The entire Surah Rahman reminds us of the bounties of Allah in a very beautiful way.
Now, to conclude in time, I will request Professor Ali Musavi to come forward and present his findings, and then request Sayyid Hadi Abidi to sum up, and that will be the end. Now, Professor Ali Musavi, please proceed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, Brother Irshad did a great job explaining. I want to remind you that in one story that everybody knows, that Ibn Abbas one day, Abdullah ibn Abbas heard Imam Ali saying, had I wanted or I have a time, I would have loaded 40 camels of explaining Surah Al-Fatiha. And then Abdullah came to Imam Ali, and Imam Ali started explaining to him. I'm just, briefly stating the story. And after 2 days of explanation, Ibn Abbas couldn't take any more knowledge. His brain was just about to explode. Imam Ali at the end said, I haven't finished explaining the dot under the ba of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So with all what we have heard, there's a lot more, much more deeper meanings even in these ayat. I'm just gonna hit at just slightly few of these things. For example, I'm just gonna give examples of these things. وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِن وَلِيٍّ. This ayah, or this part of the ayah, it's speaking about the wilayah of Allah and the wilayah of the awliya who Allah assigns as awliya, and no one else besides Allah and Rasulullah and the Imams. This ayah is saying that strictly and directly, for those who can see, that there's no true leader that is accepted by Allah except those who are assigned either by Allah or by Rasulullah or by the Imams. So the Imam Ali alayhi salam is wali because of, this ayah is telling that there is no wali other than Allah, and if Allah doesn't assign somebody wilaya, that person is not a true wali, and I can disobey him if I find him wrong. But for the Imam or the wali, then the ayah before in ayah 106 that says ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. This kind of wilaya that Allah has over the ayat, over the creation, over anything, also belongs to the Imam and no one else. The Imam that has been assigned directly by Allah or by Rasulullah or by the Imam after Rasulullah. So this is one of the things we can imagine understanding. And like Brother Arshad says, when it says, أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This is questioning, is not really a question, it's just telling us that Rasulullah had already known that, and this kind of knowledge is not like ours being aware of. Like me, if somebody asks me, conceptually, I say, yeah, it belongs to Allah. But the way Rasulullah understand that, Rasulullah is, understanding this meaning is completely different. To the point, when Allah is saying that to Rasulullah, like in Surah, in the ayah that says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ذو العرش يلقي الروح من أمره على من يشاء من عباده, and at the end it says لمن الملك اليوم, لمن الملك اليوم, and at that day the mulk is Jannah and Nar, and according to Rasulullah, Ali is Qasim al-Jannati wa Nar, so now the kingdom belongs to Ali alayhi salam in that sense. Same thing here, you know. أَلَمْ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So to the prophet, it means one thing, and it indicates something. For me, as a person who believes in the prophet, believes in the Quran, believes in Allah, it's telling me that I have to obey the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unconditionally, because to him belongs everything. The order of erasing, the order of naskh, the order of ithbat is also given to the Prophet alayhi salam. Otherwise, if Allah makes a naskh, how do I know? Unless the Prophet delivers that to me. Or if Allah makes ithbat, how do I know? So the ithbat, that same thing that Allah, it is His, it's also as a byproduct, uh, it's the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Imam, not in the sense that the Imam gonna change something that the Quran have made naskh or have been ithbat, but in the cases where things change and the rules have to change, then the Imam is the one who, or the wali that Allah assigned, is the one who is capable of doing that. Another thing, the question that was raised about Bani Israel and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them so many chances. The reason Allah gave them so many chances, because with all the kufr they did, they still had, they know of Allah. They know about Allah. They believe that Allah is Allah. They know that. And the questions and the misbehaving and the mischief that they did is something that everybody does. It's not only Bani Israel who do that. But Bani Israel, we're open about it, and we can see it, and the Quran taught us about it and showed us how merciful Allah is. So the fact that Allah forgave them so many times, He's doing that with everyone, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as long as you have this faith in you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you have a hope of forgiveness, there's a lot of room for you. And then no matter whether you are a Muslim or whatever religion you are, as long as you still have that connection with Allah, Allah is so merciful, and He's still giving you a lot of space and a lot of, rope, if you wish to use that statement. And the same thing, Allah did to them. But at the end, when they refused to take Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam as their prophet, and they chose Yahud instead, and they told Allah, we don't want Yusuf, we want this guy to be the prophet. You talk to him, we talk, and we talk to him, we negotiate the religion with him. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kind of, in a way, you don't find, in relative to how old they are, several thousand years old. Their race is not anywhere near the race of Muslims. The the ones who Muslims today are about 2 billion people. Jews, are in the few millions, and that's one of the punishment of Allah to them, because that kind of kufr is different than the kufr of rejecting a prophet and choosing their own prophet. That kind is something that nobody had done before and nobody did after. So that kind of denial was not accepted by Allah. Other issues that they had, for example, Yaqub alayhi salam forgave them for what they did to him and to what they did to Yusuf. Yusuf also forgave them for what they did with him. But Allah did not forgive them for choosing a different prophet. That's completely different set of or different level of disobedience. That's all I want to share with you. Inshallah, I didn't take a lot of time. Inshallah, we will discuss. I will contribute to whatever questions and answers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Professor Ali Musavi. Thank you very much.
Salam.
Now
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Yes. Now I request Syed Hadi Abidi to proceed to sum up our entire program. Hadi Abidi, please proceed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everybody has done excellent job. One thing I want to add, Professor has explained about the question of our Hussain Bhai, that why Allah has bestowed so many blessings on Jews. One of the hadiths of Rasulullah that whatever the Jews have done, my ummah will also do. So it is related, it was related to us, and it was necessary for our ummah to know that what the Jews have done and what they are going to do and what punishment they should expect to receive. So one of the reasons is that. And another thing, Brother Irshad Hussain has explained very recently, and then he pointed out one thing. I want to just add a few words to that about the Imam alayhi salam, awliya Allah, and they are the guidance for us. Yes, they are the guidance, and it is not only guidance. They, knowing their knowledge, knowing their status, knowing their positions, knowing their qualities, knowing their virtues, knowing their merits, if we see that how obedient they were to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how they were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this gives us ease in our activities. It gives us not only guidance, but gives us a pleasure that a Imam, having all those things, he was spending his night for praying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was fasting for the month of Shaban and Ramzan. So this encourages us, this gives us extra strength to follow the rules and regulations of Islam, the teachings, and go for to be a good obedient servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not only they are the guidance, but they did the practical this thing, and that the practical actions, if we consider, if we know about their positions and other things and what they did, it helps us to do all those things happily and in the best possible way we could do. So that's all. That's only I wanted to add, because Mah Mubarak Ramzan is also approaching. So it may help us if we know that how our Aima alayhi salam was doing their responsibilities, and they were guiding us, they were training us. So that's all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Hadi Abidi. MashaAllah. I
Something to
appreciate.
this?
Yes, please.
May I add something?
Please proceed.
Okay, the question is that you raised, I believe, why can we or cannot we ask from the imams directly? Actually, when you come to the imam with your heart and your mind and ask him to for something, you know, you need help from Imam Ali, you need help from Imam Mahdi, you need help from Imam Zain Abidin, you ask Allah by then, because you are saying, oh Imam, you know, maybe I am not that great, my deeds were bad, I still believe in you, and I know you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the shaheed is عند Allah, and is alive, how about you, the master of all the great mu'mins? So you can ask from the imam directly, knowing that imam is the wasila in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mind that. Allah in the Quran says, فَابْتَغُوا إِلَيْهِ الْوَسِيلَةِ, meaning seek to him through the path. And Imam Mahdi alayhi salam in Dua al-Nadba, he declares that they are the أين السبب المتصل بين الأرض والسماء. They are that connection between this existence of ours and the higher existence. So you can ask from the Imam confidently, knowing that if what you asked for is great for you, is good for you, it will be answered. And that's it. Salaam alaikum.
MashaAllah, we have very informative knowledge from different people, and I only pray that we all meet every week, and also see that our friends and relatives also join us, so that we'll go for another circle, because it's not possible to have too many people and yet complete in 1 hour. So 1 hour time is what we have fixed, and we are doing good with that. Now,
yeah. Can I humbly request Hadi Bhai to read 5 times Amma Yujib for the health of Brother
Sure, I will
Ishaq
do that.
and all other Mu'mineen.
Yes, it is going to be there. Without your reminding us, that is there. Hadi Abedi will take this end part of our session in reciting Amal Ejibul and also one Surah Fatiha for the Marhumeen from all our families. So I request Hadi Abedi, please proceed with the dua.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد اللهم صل على محمد وعجل فرجهم اللهم صل على محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Inshallah, we meet next Saturday and hopefully we will add more of our friends and relatives to join us and have the sawab from the knowledge which we are receiving and to sawab to those people who are giving us knowledge which we have not been knowing so far. Thank you very much. Fi amanillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر